I'm really excited to bring our next guest to the stage. Adijat is a Canadian-born Nigerian and American-raised techie girl. Technology enthusiast, she's enjoying a second career as a talent acquisition strategist at RBC. Adijat, come on up to the stage. She might be a little bit busy continuing our conversation on LinkedIn that we're having in real time right now. Thanks for joining us tonight, Adijat.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So tell me, if this is your second career, what was your first career?
My first career was every job from help desk all the way into project management on the infrastructure side of the house. So any job that had to do with infrastructure, I did it.
Amazing. And do you remember how you got your very first job?
Absolutely. Okay, let's see. Should we say my first techie job or...
Give me both. Give me the very first one and then give me the first techie job.
The very first job was a telemarketing job. Mm-hmm. And in that job, I was working in Toronto and I was trying to sell subscriptions to the Globe and Mail. And this was in 1990.
How did that go?
Oh boy. It was terrible because you call people and they hung up on you. But the good thing is you learn to adapt when people say no. So that was that one. The first techie job was right out of school. And I was lucky to get a great co-op. It was with the Ministry of Attorney General at that time. Oh, and cool. That's where I kind of got to learn different things and met a whole different set of people. Very different from what they tell you in class.
And it seems like it set you on like a sort of a full career path down that tech rabbit hole, right?
It sure did. I came out of computer programming, and then after a couple of years, I was like, I want to be where people were talking, because I was programming in COBOL, and you're just, in the back, you weren't seeing people. I kind of like hanging out with people, so I switched to the infrastructure side of the house, and I never looked back.
And out of just curiosity, are you guys still hiring COBOL developers?
You know what? We do. We actually have mainframe developers that we do need. We're a bank, so we have some sections that we do need that skill. For those that are in that area, we are hiring. Check us out online.
Not a lot of Waterloo co-ops learning COBOL today, I guess.
No. And when we say co-op now, we're kind of aging ourselves.
I know. Well, hey, look, when you've had a number of different roles sort of across the US and Canada, was it always just you like applying to job postings, or were there ever like more unique ways that you had to get noticed and to get a role?
Certainly applied to the jobs. But I will say that there is power in networking, in never giving up, and sending an email, reaching out to people. You want to make sure you apply, because when the talent acquisition specialist is looking through, they'll probably be working through the ATS system, the tracking system.
Right.
Sending an email, somebody that works there. I usually look for a friend of a friend, your godmother's friend, anyone that works in any company. Reach out to them. What's the worst they'll say? No. But reach out.
So step one is have lots of friends.
Definitely.
And then that's cool. So I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm also going to let the audience know that if you're here tonight and you got a question for her, let them put it in the chat. Absolutely. Right? If you start with question, I'll pick some of my favorites out here and I'll ask them. If we don't get to them, maybe we'll send them to you after to continue.
Sure.
So you made this transition from telemarketing and selling Globe Mail subscriptions to your technology infrastructure world. Can you tell me about your thought process when you made? I know it was some time ago, but tell me about your thought process when you made that transition into this world, and maybe even into the transition to talent acquisition from being on the infrastructure and development side.
Absolutely. Coming out, the Globe and Mail job was survival. So I'm a firm believer you do whatever job you have to do to survive in college. Yeah. And then on the technical side, it was more of where my heart was. So I enjoyed the interaction with people, which is one of the reasons why I switched to infrastructure. And then coming out of technology, you kind of grow your career, you move around, live around, and do different things, which was great. It's perfectly great to move around to different companies, or if you're in a large company, different lines of businesses is great too. You learn a lot. But then the transition from technologist to talent acquisition was a very funny one. I moved to Toronto from the States, and I worked as a contractor. So I went to the typical agencies that I knew, and people had asked me, would you want to be a technical recruiter? I'm like, no, I don't know anything about that. Well, I met this one lady that just said, I think you do great. And I said, what do I have to lose? Worst case, I can always go back and get, my network administrator job or my PM job. I'm like, okay. So I tried it. I'm like, whoa, this is cool. But what I liked was you do so many things, but there's the gratification for me where someone's looking for a job. Everyone's looking for a job at some point, but there's always that special person. Maybe they sort of, it's almost like an underdog. They move from a different country or they're starting out or something, and you kind of work along with them, you guide them, and they get to the point that they actually get the job.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe that with words. It just,
do you have like is there like a story of a special underdog? I mean, you've been there for a few years now that you've seen sort of like defy the odds and build, a multi-year incredible career at the company.
Yes, I will say there is one. And I may or may not have cried when I spoke to him, but he was super smart. He had an accent, but because he was in an area that I had worked in, I asked the guy questions like I was hiring him. So I knew he knew his stuff. So I talked to this client and said, look, talk to this guy. I said, no, talk to him. Ask him technical questions. Tell him to write it on the board. And they did. And the manager called me right after. The guy wasn't even home yet. He said, Adijat, I'm hiring him. And I said, okay. And then, of course, we're talking money. And then I pushed back and said, they're like, well, how much does he want? I knew how much he was thinking he should get, but he was new. He didn't know what it should be. So I asked for a higher salary. What's the worst they'll say? No, right? They agreed. Yeah. And then I said, maybe I should have asked for 10K more. But, but I called this candidate when he got home, and I told him that they want to hire him. They're going to make him an offer. And he choked up. And then he said, here, talk to my wife. And she was speaking, and she was in tears. And was just super happy because I think at that point he'd been looking for about 9 months and kept going back and back. So for me, that was probably one of the best ones for me. And I still talk to him till this day. This was about 7 years ago, and we still talk.
And Adijat, I think what's amazing, not just about the relationship you built there, but even early on, the advocacy you showed on his behalf. Yes. When you think about employers today, do you think they've changed? They're looking beyond that. They're getting people right to the board, or do you think they're still getting hung up on some of the issues that prevented this from being a slam dunk and for them being advocates for foreign or underrepresented talent right off the bat?
I think it falls both ways. The hiring managers and employers are certainly doing better. What has happened now with talent acquisition is that many of us have been through a lot of cycles. 9 times out of 10, we are either from that area or we've certainly seen a few things. So we know to tell the candidate, look, I tell candidates, there's a whiteboard in the room. Well, before COVID, use the whiteboard. Sometimes draw a diagram, it tells better. And you explain to the hiring manager beforehand. And this is where it's great when you talk to the candidates before, you have some kind of inside knowledge, and you can tell the hiring manager, you know what? He's a great guy. He's smart. Or she's a great girl. She's smart. She knows her stuff. Might be a little bit on the shy side. So if she doesn't look you in the eye, it's okay. Don't take it personal. Or, just little things that I believe in answering questions before they're asked, which is the hiring manager. I give them all the information before they're asked. I also believe in letting the candidate know that they are empowered. You are interviewing the hiring team just as much as they're interviewing you.
So I love this because you're helping to coach the hiring manager to make sure they overcome maybe any biases or any hesitations that they have.
Yes.
If you're a candidate out there and you're working with a hiring manager where they're not receiving such sage outside counsel, is there language or things that you can do to help guide them and push them in this direction during the process?
I think there is. You will always find amazing, it goes the whole gamut, amazing to the ones we want to really, really work with. We need a little bit more hand-holding, I'll say. So you're going to have that whole gamut. One of the things that I say is, as a candidate, when you get in, you it's almost like you gauge the room. Okay. Right. Yeah. There might be, if it's a panel interview, there might be different personalities. There's always one person that's a bit more of a talker. There's always, in a panel interview, there's always going to be...
Probably me. That's probably
definitely
me,
you. But there's always going to be one person that's pretty much maybe taking notes or just, kind of quiet and observing. That's okay. Don't feel threatened by it. It's normal because it's like a meeting. Somebody's got to take minutes. But then make sure you're able to, when they ask you questions, I would say if you don't understand the question, it's very okay to ask them to clarify it rather than answer wrong. Okay?
Yeah.
If you don't know something, it is super okay, not just okay, but super okay to say, I don't know that, but I'm open to learning. Or, just once you have a hiring manager understands that you have soft skills. We always talk about soft skills, but you have the ability to learn and you're coachable. You don't have to know everything. You need to know the basics.
Yes.
I mean, if you're going to be a Java developer, you can't come and say, I know how to take photographs and I read a book. That won't work. But I think there's you once you go in and you work with them and you talk to them, the conversation should be a flowing one.
I think that's great. And I've already seen in the chat, someone mentioned that a lot of immigrants forget that it's a conversation and not just a direct Q&A. So I love that. I also see a great question here I want to ask from Daniel Chen. So Daniel Chen says, when transitioning between careers, what would you say is more important between having gateway credentials versus fit and attitude? So having like the soft skills that are needed versus like the hard, maybe Canadian designation. Based on your recruitment experience and insight, what are some common themes for successful candidates transitioning careers? And my guess with the gateway comment is also transitioning geographies like you've done.
I will say if there's one thing that I have to talk about when you're transitioning is every job you do has transferable skills. If you are in a job where you need to be organized, you're bringing it from another job. If you're in a job where there's a lot of interaction, for me, I'm a recruiter. One of the things that I have to do, I have to meet people. I have to be able to gauge them, talk to them. Transferable skill from my technology days, I'm on a help desk. And if you've ever called a help desk, people are not calling the help desk when they're happy. They're calling when they're upset. So
you also got to keep the boom mic here from your days at the help
desk. See?
Yeah.
And this is a total habit. But you see, I think that would be it. And then the soft skills is one. When you're transitioning into an area, if you are not trained in that area yet, I would say if there's formal training that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, yes, go ahead. If you can job shadow, if you can go to see somebody that's in that role, sit with them for a bit, talk to people.
I love that.
That's a good one because I've seen people that say, I want to do this. And I'm like, okay, go talk to this person and sit with them. They come back and they're like, I don't want to do that job.
Try before you buy. I love that. I think that's fantastic. No, I got two more quick questions for you. The first is, I know that diversity and inclusion in the tech space is a huge passion of yours. I was wondering, could you sort of share with the audience like the most impactful initiative that you've led to further the cause of underrepresented minorities in tech?
I will say the most impactful is having those conversations in-house. Okay. I'm a firm believer. Yes, we can go outside and reach out to people that are underrepresented and talk to them and, tell them we have a great, whatever company you work for, we have great things. But if you are not internally making sure that you are fostering them, you are empowering them, you're making the environment and you understand them, right? If you're not doing that, easy example. If I'm not aware of other religious holidays and I have people that are in the minority in those areas, and I set a big meeting on the day there's a religious holiday, well, we might have to talk about that. They might not say anything, but it's those little things where people feel that they belong. I would say that would be my thing, is having those conversations in-house.
Getting little things right internally. Absolutely. I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
That's great. And then I got one more question for you, which is, I talked about at the beginning of the event tonight, the H-1B suspension in the United States. So lots of qualified non-Canadians in the US might be looking here for their next opportunity, or they could be here already.
Yes.
And there was this discussion in the TechTO Insider Slack. It was about some of the unique challenges that foreigners face in looking for their first job here. What's your advice to newcomers? Any tactical things that you do at RBC to help make your roles more accessible to everybody?
I will say we partner with a lot of newcomer that are focused on newcomers in different ethnicities and in different areas. So we partner with them and we kind of give them information on the types of people. For example, if somebody has capital market experience in Brazil, it's capital market experience. So there's nothing to stop them from doing that here. So we tell them the types of things we look for. We also host a lot of things in-house where we have people come in. So there's a lot of outreach on that. Then the other thing is, again, inside education. We have our internal conversations of they don't have Canadian experience. They don't have to have Canadian experience. So a lot of that has gone on where we reach out and do a lot of that. I will say for somebody just coming in, find networks, find places that people that are in the same space as you, where they reach out to. LinkedIn is a powerful tool. If you, for example, you have women, we have women in technology. We have Persian women in technology. We have a couple of newcomer companies. I can't remember their names right now, but this is what they specialize in. And they have a lot of connections to many companies that can certainly give you that edge, and they coach you.
Amazing. Adijat, I'm looking at the chat. Tons of thankful comments for you sharing your expertise, and also a few more outstanding questions. I think you're going to be hanging out in on one of the booths later tonight.
Yes,
is that right?
We'll be hanging out in the RBC booth later on, so I'll certainly be glad to answer questions and hang out with everyone that comes in there. So stop by.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adijat.
Pleasure talking to you, Jason.